This program is brought to you by Stanford University. Please visit us at stanford.edu.
That's reminiscent of Frank's concept of the abstract. You have the abstract, which actually summarizes what I'm going to say. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I also want to thank Frank in the presence of at least 3 of my postdocs on behalf of all the faculty for extremely well articulating what all of us say in private about writing papers in which many of you didn't believe. And I hope after today you understand those are rules for all of us and for all of you. And it's not that we're being pain in the ass, that we really want you to do these things. Write them before you have all the data. Let me know what you're telling. Let all of us know what's the story. What are you really trying to sell here? And that our critiques are really in line with what Frank has said is important. We're trying to make it catchy. I call it show business, and I know how to be a show business person. And you haven't learned that yet, many of you. And it's something that's crucial. All of us are smart. Those who are successful are extremely smart, but in general, they're also show people. And you can get up in front of an audience and captivate them with your story. Other people can have a very similar story that doesn't captivate. And all of that's important in the academic and, well, as the industrial surroundings. Why does industry care about academic research? There's a term, it's ROI, the return on investment. And when one sets up relationships with industry, it's not generally to your best interest what they're trying to do. What they're trying to do is capture a market for whatever the technology, the product, the observations that they have. But you're an extremely good salesperson for that company if you can set up the right arm's length relationships and negotiations to actually showcase the technology that's developed by that company as it relates to your own studies. So what I'll tell you about today are some specific examples of how my laboratory has been able to work with industry in ways that I think benefit both of us. Again, it's important to keep conflict of interest in mind as one does this so that you aren't really a shill for the company at any level, that you don't do studies in which you're compensated for the company to carry forward their research without total acknowledgement. It's not illegal, maybe a little immoral, but as long as you're very public about it, you're not deluding anyone with your relationship with that company. So I'm going to talk today more about basic research than clinical trials, and the way relationships I've established over decades now with various companies have allowed my laboratory access to early technology, which has allowed us to showcase technology the company is developing, and allowed us sometimes to be the first laboratory to do X, Y, or Z because we had access through the beta test site arrangements with the company to use their equipment, their technology early on in helping us to develop questions. So I'm going to talk about the need for academic research laboratory and industry collaboration for gene therapy. And I'm not going to talk about oncology. And in fact, the slip of the tongue in the introduction, I didn't found the Clinical Oncology Society, founded the Federation of Clinical Immunology Societies. And what I'm going to talk about is autoimmunity. And many of you will say, why autoimmunity? Well, if you stop and think, and Sakaguchi actually showed this one time in a very interesting article that I use the word teeter-totter. I'm an old guy, but you could say a fulcrum, a balance, that too much immunity results in autoimmunity, and too little immunity results in cancer. And this has been shown, demonstrated in animals by the use of regulatory T cells. Too many or too few can give you autoimmunity or cancer. Very clearly, one cell type can change the spectrum of the animal from an autoimmune phenotype to a model of the ability to generate cancers. So it's not totally out in the woods what I'm talking about. I think the first slide from that well-known, how do I make these go? This guy. That was right. From that well-known scientific journal called The Chronicle, came out after I'd sent my first set of slides in, and so I quickly used this in an acknowledgement of problems both in the public reporting of errors, and then the second generation, which came out yesterday, of the acknowledgement, well, maybe it wasn't as bad as it seemed. And I don't know how many of you saw this article, and it sort of shocked me at one level, and then 3 days later, the explaining what had really happened, they think. But the first headline is really going to get the attention of all the public. That is, somebody died that was under a gene therapy trial. If this were the first one, it might be a bigger headline, but it isn't the first one. It's more than a handful of deaths now have occurred in